In the third and final part of the micro-credential course, we will look at the use of JavaScript to work alongside our HTML and CSS. So the objectives of the course are to declare and use JavaScript variables using the let or the var keyword. Two different ways to declare a variable. We will then read values from a web page form using the controls ID or name. We use JavaScript to create functions so that we can modularize the JavaScript code rather than having it all in one chunk. We will use selection and iteration in JavaScript. We will add the data to an array, and we will use JavaScript to display information at particular HTML tags on a web page form. We will also use JavaScript to write to the console, which is behind the web page or in our browser. And we will use a JavaScript function to perform a mathematical calculation and return a quote amount. So ultimately, we want to have a form where people can put in information and we will give them a quote, and we will do that with this course. So what is JavaScript? Well, JavaScript is a lightweight programming language, or some people will say it's a scripting language. JavaScript can be used to create dynamic interactions between web pages and server applications. So we use JavaScript to make things dynamic so that it's not a static page. We can change it and put people's name in or give them different quotes. JavaScript has a simple structure and it is relatively easy to learn and implement. JavaScript works well with what we have done before, which is cascading style sheets, and in formatting HTML, which we have also looked at as part of the course. JavaScript was traditionally used on the client side, but now it is also used on the server side. So we'll talk about things like the client side, which is our machine that we're using, and the server side, which is where we send data to get the quote back or to store information on a database. So we have a client and a server, and that's part of what we do when we're doing our HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We want information to come from the customer or from the client to the server, to our machines at the back. Nowadays, JavaScript is used in many libraries, and one of the most popular ones at the moment would be React.js. So when we go to write our JavaScript, we can put the JavaScript directly into the HTML code, or we can keep it separate from our HTML code. So we can have JavaScript internally or externally. If we do it internally, we enclose the JavaScript between an opening and closing script. So we can see in the diagram, script, and then we have type equals text / JavaScript, and then we have an end script. And in between the opening script and the closing script, we have an alert, which is like a pop-up, and the pop-up just simply says JavaScript programming. So we have HTML code, but inside it we have JavaScript code enclosed in a script tag. And we can see on the right hand side that it just simply pops up with a message JavaScript programming if we ran that HTML page. Another way to do it would be to keep the JavaScript code separate from the HTML code, which is a much more efficient way to do it. So we can see that on the left hand side in the HTML we have a script tag again and an end script tag, but this time the script tag doesn't contain the JavaScript code, it contains a link to the JavaScript code. So we have src equals the JavaScript code.js, which would be the name of the JavaScript file. But we would still have the same code, as you can see at the bottom. We would have alert JavaScript programming, but we don't need to enclose it in a script because we already have the script inside the HTML. And if we ran that, then it would give us exactly the same answer, JavaScript programming. So what development tools do we need to develop JavaScript? Well, to write JavaScript, we really don't need any fancy software. We can just use a basic editor like Notepad or WordPad if we're on a Windows operating system, or we can use a text edit program which comes with a Mac operating system, or essentially anything that we can write our code into, like Word or Notes. But it's much better if we can use something which will help us. So we can also download Visual Studio Code, which is free and has versions for Windows and Mac. And the reason we will use Visual Studio Code is that it provides support for JavaScript programming without needing to do anything. So we download Visual Studio Code and we can put in JavaScript and it will help us with syntax. So there's syntax highlighting, smart completions with IntelliSense, and customizable formatting. As we type JavaScript into Visual Studio Code, we're offered suggestions through JavaScript IntelliSense, which is absolutely fantastic. As developers, we want as much help as we can. So in the image below, we can see that as we type the word for, we get a context of suggestions. So we get suggestions like form or for or form : get. And if we want the for, we just move down to it and we press the enter key, and that will add a for loop construct. And that's what we mean by the IntelliSense or the help, and we will use that throughout the course. Once we have written the HTML and the JavaScript, we will want to see what the web page will look like, or what it will do when the JavaScript code has been called. For example, will it do a pop-up for us the way we saw earlier on, or does it write to the console? So to be able to see the web page, we need to use a readily available browser such as Safari or Firefox or Google Chrome or Edge. These and other web browsers have been designed to read our HTML documents, display them as web pages, and also run the external or internal JavaScript. So not only does the browser display the HTML and use the CSS to style it, it also can read the JavaScript and decide what to do. So the browser reads through the JavaScript code, it interprets each line, and then runs the line. The process is shown in the diagram below, but this is only just to give you an idea of what's happening. We do not need to concern ourselves with this. We will simply code the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and all the magic will take place in the browser. So in our course, we will use Visual Studio Code as we have done for the HTML and the CSS. And we will also use Google Chrome to display our web pages and to run our JavaScript. So we will be using JavaScript as our programming language